Hi, welcome back to a new episode of Champions of Performance Marketing. Today's guest is someone whose campaigns speak louder than words. I'm super happy to have here somebody that has real hands-on experience in scaling campaigns and knows how to generate thousands of sales across different platforms. Raanan Rosenbaum. Hi, Raanan.
Hi,
Thank you for
Julia.
joining me today.
Thank you. My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Let's start. I always like this. Let's start with your journey. How did you get into performance marketing? And what led you start your own agency?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been in the industry now. I seem so old, but about 7 years now, which I know for our industry is a lot. I really fell into it. I have a background in jewelry, so I worked in diamonds and gemstones for many years. I've always had a talent in terms of relationships and sales and kind of the long-term business development of it all. And when I moved to the Netherlands, where I now live in Amsterdam, it was very difficult to find work in my chosen profession because I didn't speak Dutch. And I was recruited by a headhunter to get into payment processing. I worked in high risk adult. And then I was recruited from there into performance marketing, working for a Dutch network here in the Netherlands. And it was all brand new to me. I didn't understand anything about what was going on the internet. We were doing adult dating, sweepstakes, Nutra, a little bit of everything. And I didn't know what I was looking at, but very quickly in it started to make a lot of sense to me. And I started to really like the flow and how things go. I had great training working on the network side, getting access to some of the top affiliates in the space, understanding what it takes to make a top offer, how people are running on different platforms. So it was really interesting. And I did that for a few years until I stumbled onto the direct response space. And really like the land of like VSLs and video sales letters, which was fascinating to me because I didn't understand. It's like the evolution of the infomercial in the US and then seeing the engagement, seeing how it works. It was fascinating to me because what I got into with performance marketing was really everything metrics, numbers, and then the VSL space and direct response has so much more about mechanisms with copy and how you connect with clients. And the way that my autistic brain sometimes puts things together, I was able to see in layers just all these different aspects of the industry that were really fascinating. And so as I've moved along in the space, I've had a lot of access to different things, working on the email side, working with list management and how to really cultivate customers, as well as the last 2.5 years, I worked for one of the biggest media agencies in the world and really got to see top performing campaigns and what's going on all different platforms, from Meta to YouTube to Snapchat, TikTok, AppLovin, you name it, CTV. And I just, over the years as well, have kind of curated an amazing network of people. I like to help people, and in return, a lot of people help me. So I have this really valuable network that I'm sometimes floored at having access to. Senior reps at a lot of the different ad platforms like Meta and TikTok and Snapchat and you name it. But also I've had experience talking to and dealing with the best copywriters in the space, the best video editors, the best, you name it. And most of my closest friends in the space happen to be media buyers or some form of affiliates. So, the same people tend to hang out together. So it just has made sense. And a few months ago, I really learned about my autism, which has been a new thing, understanding how my brain works and operates. And I realized that I really do well being in charge of myself. And this is such an entrepreneurial industry, and there's so many things. I had been thinking about it for years. And my best friend, who happens to be one of the best VSL makers in the space, his name is Mark Shea. We partnered up together to start consulting and helping people with getting offers off the ground. If there are obstacles with it, what we can do in terms of an audit, helping them with different things. Over the years, I've always had a great talent at, I'll sit with someone on a call and walk through their VSL start to finish, frame by frame, and give them meta compliance notes or break down what's needed. It just made sense to monetize it. At the same time, we do CRO. We help people in terms of the creative journey, unlocking new platforms. It's a lot of things, but a big part of kind of how my autistic brain does things is I see the big picture before other people. Like I've made a lot of people in the space millions of dollars just based on gut instincts that weren't even based on metrics. So for me, I sometimes see 10 steps ahead and I like to help people in the space. Starting my own agency with my best friend just made the most sense. And we do a number of different things. We do strategic help. We help people with getting the right doors open for them. We help them if they need a fleshed out affiliate program, if they need help from the copy side, whatever the case is. We even do recruiting for people in the space. So it's just, it's been really a dream that I'm very happy only a few months in to say is going really well.
Wow, I'm super happy to hear. That's quite a story. And I like that you are helping people in the space,
I
giving back.
try.
You learned at the beginning, not knowing, not having experience, and now you just give away
Well,
things and helping.
there's no rule book in this industry. I always say to people, it's like the wild, wild west. You really don't know. And sometimes you can be talking to two different companies that are both humongous, that do great numbers and great things, and they're legends in the space, but they could have different terminology for the same thing. And you don't know if you don't ask. And it doesn't make one right and one wrong. There's really no rule book. The people I know who have been in the industry the longest, 15 plus years, these people are like dinosaurs. Whereas I come from, no, and I mean that in a great way. Like I come from the world of jewelry where it has hundreds of years of protocol and how things work, and in this space it's constantly evolving, and I love the new nature to that. I think it's fun. There's always something new happening that if you're willing to learn, you can make money.
Yeah, I recently heard again that affiliate marketing is dying again, but it's not like that. We adapt. I think affiliate marketing
It
always
depends
adapt.
on what you look at. Like I know, for instance, just to jump in, I'll tell you with TikTok Shops, for example. TikTok Shops is like this beautiful creation, in my opinion, of basically combining the video elements of TikTok through all different video creatives and things with kind of an Amazon checkout page. And I've seen brands scale major money on TikTok Shops. I mean, even this past September, it was still kind of, I believe, still in beta or just really recently launched. And I see brands doing major money on there, but you can't really work with typical affiliates in that sense. You have creators on there. So you have these amazing UGC creators and people who are going on and promoting different brands, supplements, health and wellness brands, e-commerce, all sorts of different things. And there's so much money to be made, but part of where I see the biggest vendors doing the most money are the ones who do the research and development, who understand who are the best creators. It's not necessarily someone with a huge following, it's someone with a lot of engagement. So sometimes that could
Yeah.
be someone that only has 6,000 followers, but they have people that are really tuning in to see what they're doing, versus someone who might have 30 or 40,000 followers and they don't have any buyers or engagement in that list. So I think affiliate management and the affiliate program is always going to be there, but it evolves and it depends on the platform you're working on.
So yeah, you're all right. About UGCs, what's your framework in finding the right creators? You mentioned that it doesn't matter with how many followers, the engagement matters most, but how do you find them?
For me, for instance, I mean, there are, of course, different spy tools and things you can look at, but really for research and development, the most important thing is you're looking for authenticity on TikTok. You really have a snap moment that you can hook people in a visual way, and you're looking for authenticity. So, for example, let's just use the example of if I was doing, let's say, a cognitive brain supplement brand. I would start looking at similar brands, things in my space, and see who are the creators promoting there. There are going to be times where there are creators who have an exclusive deal, but most of the creators who are promoting different supplement brands and things on there are working with a number of people. So I would look at who has the most engagement. I would look at who's working, and I would really then individually reach out to those creators and try to create an affiliate program. It still becomes where you're paying them like a cost per sale or cost per acquisition. So it's very similar as a vendor to any affiliate program, but you're really looking for people that match with the brand. It's not about necessarily someone that has the biggest following, even if they have engagement. If it doesn't make sense for them to be promoting your brand, for example, If you have a top performing creator who's doing all these different skincare brands, but they're bald, even if it's beautiful, even if they're very good looking, it doesn't make a difference. You're not going to use them for a hair care brand. It just doesn't
Of
make
course.
sense. And so similarly, I would just look for people that fit and are aligned with the brand messaging, because that's how you're really going to catch people with authenticity.
Yeah. Okay. And what about ad fatigue? I mean, I know that the videos on TikTok, they need to be replaced very often. What are
Yeah,
the best tips for avoiding burnout, I would say?
ad fatigue, I think one of the most important things is that you really pay attention to what's going on. When an audience is seeing the same creative too often, you really need to be paying attention to how many clicks you're getting, what the view through rate is, really understanding your metrics in terms of where there might be a drop off. There are things, for instance, if you're on TikTok, there's TikTok Studio. You can see if people are going past the first 3 seconds. You can see where it is. You really have a small window to catch people. So I think one of the most important things with ad fatigue is, of course, watching, but then also is rotating the creatives frequently. It's really important that you're trying new things and that you keep attempting to do. And if you see, as you're refreshing hooks and angles, maybe the colors or the headlines, see which ones are getting the most attention. There might be a buzzword or keyword that you're using and you're not even aware of in all the best. So it's important to track every change that you make and what's going on. It's also important to introduce new formats. It may be with the ad fatigue that it's not necessarily the creative as much as it's the format. So maybe you should be trying a carousel, or maybe you need a video, or maybe you should be doing testimonials or more UGC led content. So I think it's really important to, more than anything, track what you're doing so that you can understand what variances are making the difference.
Okay. So split testing, tracking, and optimizing at the end.
Yeah, but I see with a lot of people that there's an obstacle. Sometimes they'll make a ton of creatives, but like, let's use like Meta, for example. They might put automatic rules in place in terms of when you hit X amount of spend, when to shut it off. And a lot of times people are, let's say, offshooting like 30 different creatives for a campaign, and they're putting these rules in, but they're looking at it at more of a macro level versus individually. I've seen before a campaign that had, for a $75 spend, it had 3 sales. But because of how they had everything set up, and this is for a Nutra campaign that the CPAs were around $70, but the way that they had things set up with auto rules, they were doing such a large cascade of ads that they didn't catch how successful that campaign set was. So I think it's really important, on top of automating rules, that you have someone who understands the numbers and knows what they're looking at in terms of creatives to really keep it into place. And if you're a one-man shop and you're by yourself as an affiliate, a solo affiliate, I think it's really important to reach out either through affiliate shows or through online Facebook groups or Telegram groups and start meeting with similar creators or similar affiliates that you can learn from and share information, because that's how you move along. I always say it's not about inventing the wheel or reinventing. It's taking what's working and putting your own specific spin. So finding someone that works in your lane and being able to either be mentored by them or share information can be super helpful.
Yeah, I totally agree. And surrounding yourself with people that are like ahead of you, like, I don't know, I wouldn't say smarter, but they have more experience and they try different things. You don't have to try all of them. You just need to learn from their experience.
Exactly.
And what about ad networks, ad platforms? What are the top ad platforms that I don't know, that you would recommend media buyers to pay attention to right now?
For sure. I mean, Meta is always going to be kind of the best entry point, just because there's a low barrier to enter with a minimal daily budget. So you can really test some things at a lower rate and kind of get some things going. It can also be extremely helpful if you're doing an info product, or something where you really need to be focused on targeting or behavioral data. Meta can be a really great entry point, but at the same time, it depends on the product. Like, for example, if you have a product that specifically is going to be focused around high energy UGC, if you have a plan in terms of how you want to connect, if it's a product that has some unique characteristic that you can really spin into a story, then TikTok can be a great, great avenue. So it depends on if you're going in there. Snapchat is really, really strong for personal development, fitness, nutrition, ADHD or procrastination content. And it tends to actually, which was very surprising for me, skew much older for North America. So generally, like a 45 plus works really well on Snapchat, which a lot of people don't realize. So it depends. And there's also right now, AppLovin is blowing up like crazy. It's primarily used for in-app advertising and app installs, so like CPI focused, but it's become so much more in the last year alone, especially with the election last year. I saw so many affiliates and media buyers kind of taking time off from Facebook because the CPAs were insane and it was really hard to get anything to work. And AppLovin kind of popped up out of nowhere. And while it's really especially great with, in-app placements where you can reward video, you can do native ads in there. There's all different types of formats you can do. It really has become incredibly strong for both e-commerce and direct-to-consumer brands. Because unlike, really scroll heavy feeds, users are already interacting with the games that they're in, and they're kind of in a relaxed, dopamine rich kind of space where they're happy to do stuff. And the ads inserted in there, they feel more organic to the customer. So on the user journey, they tend to perform really well. I know a lot of brands that are doing in the last 6 to 8 months, 90% of their sales on AppLovin, a lot of e-commerce and D2C brands that as of a year ago had no interest or connection to AppLovin. And one of the other things that can be really great in this new emerging world of app-based products, it can be incredibly great for getting something launched and started in there. So I think AppLovin is really great. And then you also have things like CTV, but CTV or connected TV, which it delivers streaming ads directly into the house. So if you're watching YouTube or something on a home television through streaming, and there's all these cool ways to engage with the end user, like using QR codes to drive engagement. It's really great for brand visibility, but it's not what I would suggest necessarily to a media buyer or an affiliate that's trying to get started. It really makes more sense when you're already working on a, let's say, bigger scale with a brand and understand different aspects of how you're growing the brand, because there's a lot of organic that comes from that, just from the brand visibility. So it's almost like when you're running on Facebook and you have tofu top of the funnel, mofu middle of the funnel, and bofu, a lot of CTV becomes a lot of tofu top of the funnel.
Yeah.
So you're not always looking for the same ROI in terms of what you're doing. You're looking for the brand presenting. So it just really depends on what the niche you're looking at is, what kind of product, and where it's going to connect.
Thank you. I'm glad that you mentioned AppLovin. I heard about it so much lately. I think
It's really interesting. And I'll say also for a lot of brands, it's not that you can just post anything or do, but because it's in kind of a newer beta, let's say, similar to other platforms when they first started, there's a lot more, let's say, leniency on compliance, which helps a lot of brands get started. So if you have something like, I don't know, let's say a CBD brand that's not going to get approved on Facebook, it's most probably going to be approved on AppLovin. So it doesn't mean that you can run these like illegal angles and do crazy things, but you have an easier entry point with AppLovin depending on the product.
Yeah, I think they have a compliance policy pretty strong on AppLovin. But is there a minimum budget to run on AppLovin? I know that they have like strict rules to approving
There
affiliate.
typically are. And you also need to be an offer owner on some level. They're not just working with external affiliates. So if you're running your own offer with an internal team or you have something there, then it makes sense. So AppLovin isn't, let's say, as easy an entry point for a newer affiliate or a media buyer that doesn't have as much experience. But if you're already scaling, for instance, on Google or on TikTok or on Meta, then it might be the next step.
Okay. So preferably to have your own offers, to have your team of media buyers.
Yeah, I don't believe right now. It could have changed, but as of, last month with AppLovin, they still weren't approving independent media buyers. It's people have to have their own offer.
Okay. Yeah, it is worth checking probably, but yeah, since it's so successful, I think maybe many will start looking into it more and more and into these ads that are on like apps.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think right now people kind of overlook how amazing TikTok shops can be, as well as Snapchat. They're both, they're really amazing platforms that I know brands that are doing major scale on both. And it's not, I think a lot of people see Meta as the only entry point. While Meta is great and there's so much there, it's not necessarily going to work for everyone. It may not even work for what you're promoting. And sometimes you can find a way in that works really, really well on another brand or another platform, I mean.
And for Snapchat, like what angles work best
I
for
think
affiliate?
Snapchat, it's really important, of course, that you're delivering that authenticity and connecting quickly, but Snapchat has a more playful quality. So, for instance, there's a lot of really great ads on Snapchat that are using a lot of like emoji accents or different stickers or things in the video. It can be really helpful. Another thing that's also really great on Snapchat is UGC. So even if it's a video that's not entirely UGC, having that kind of streamed into it or cut in some sort of B-roll can be really helpful in terms of connecting with your buyers.
Okay, that's good to know. Um when you're deciding which platform to scale a campaign, for example, what metrics or signals guide you to scale the campaign?
I think there's a number of different things you want to look at in terms of scaling it. Of course, you want to look at what the ROAS is and what your return on ad budget is, but it's not the only thing. For example, I think it's really important that you understand the AOV or your average order value. So really the money that's coming in on day one, as well as the LTV, so the lifetime value of that customer. A lot of affiliates and media buyers that I speak to who are doing a lot of scale online, they don't understand the leverage that they have. For example, if you're delivering a certain level of scale or volume to an offer owner or a vendor, depending on what the AOV is, that could highly or significantly affect what your CPA is. You might be able to get a huge bump, but if you don't know where you're performing and where things fall, you're kind of driving blind because you might be very happy with the CPA that you're receiving. But if you're doing 50 plus sales a day and you could get $10 more or $5 more on that CPA, that changes everything in terms of profitability. Understanding the numbers better gives you more leverage with the offer owner or the vendor. You might be able to negotiate then prepayment, which helps you scale. If the performance is really good, the AOV looks good, and LTV, most vendors, once you've proven yourself, are more than happy to prepay for traffic. So that can help you in terms of cash flow to scale a campaign. I think it's also, you want to look at the CTR, the click-through rate. It's really important to understand how your ads are performing and where there are drop-off points. And then, of course, you're looking at both the CPA, so the cost per action, as well as the CPC, the cost per click. It really needs to offset that you're spending money that makes sense before you start to scale. It's never going to, if you have a creative that's working really well, but you're overpaying on the CPA, you're never going to be able to scale it properly. It's going to be something where eventually you're going to hemorrhage money and lose. It's also really important to understand, and this goes into AOV and LTV, but your refund and chargeback rate, because those are things that are going to affect the scalability long term with that vendor. If you have a number of chargebacks coming in and they're not catching them at first, it's something that's going to stop you maybe as you're scaling, or may get in the way of some of your payments coming through, which then affect other campaigns you're on. So I think it's really important to understand from all angles what kind of sales you're driving or bringing in.
Okay, that was my next question, actually. What metrics should follow a media buyer for their campaigns? But glad that you clarified that. So you say that a media buyer could ask a better CPA, a better commission, I would say, payment, if they follow their LTV and AOV metrics and they see that they bring real value to the vendor.
For
But
sure.
when you say vendor, you are talking about directly working with a brand, or you work with the brand through an affiliate network? What's your experience there?
It could be either. It depends on where your comfort is. If you're working with a brand, like a network that you really love and trust, and they're taking care of you, you can talk with your account manager. You can talk with someone at that network to help you. I know a lot of media buyers that work both through networks as well as directly with offer owners or vendors. It really depends. If you have a great relationship with a specific platform, if you're doing all your business with Digistore and they're taking care of you, then there's not necessarily a need for you to be working directly with the vendor. It really depends on where your where your comfort is in terms of things. As long as you can get those answers like AOV, understand where you're performing, and they can help assist you in negotiating. It doesn't have to be a relationship directly with the vendor. I've seen ClickBank, Digistore, Buy Goods, all these different networks really assist their top players and their best affiliates and media buyers in getting the best possible deals.
That's nice to hear. What about tracking? I know when we talked last time, you said that is non-negotiable. So for media buyers that still rely on spreadsheets, what would you say to them?
I mean, I think spreadsheets are fine. I think it's just a way of kind of looking small in a way at the bigger picture, because you're not going to be able to get to a point of scale and understanding everything going on if you can't track everything. And spreadsheets are great. And I definitely think they're good, but it's important to have some sort of professional tracking. There's all these different CRMs and ways to get set up, which is important. I think more than anything, one of the best things in this new day of, GDPR and the changes in tracking with iOS 14 updates and all these different things is to set up server to server postback links on top of if you're doing a Facebook pixel or some sort of JavaScript or anything in there, just because server to server postback links are always going to be the most accurate way to track things. And if you're going the route on a mobile device where they're opting out of tracking, there's a very good chance you lose that sale. And if you're an affiliate media buyer and you're, let's say, junior to meteor and you're doing 5 to 10 sales a day on a few different campaigns, if one of those campaigns has 50 plus affiliates working on it and you lost the tracking, there's a good chance that it's not going to be attributed to your bank account. So you're basically doing the work for others. So I think it's really important to be making sure you're up to date with everything so that you can help attribute properly what's going on. If there are pixel limitations, if people are opting out of tracking, this way you can really keep with server to server postback links, a way to really keep everything efficiently tracked.
Totally agree. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit. You said that your agency and you specialize in helping companies with CRO improvements. What are the top CRO changes you and your team make that consistently, I think, improve performance, I would say? Like,
For
is there a
sure.
checklist or something that you follow?
Yeah, so there's a number of things, but like for instance, I'm always looking at mechanisms and what's working. So for example, it's important that you're making sure that they're clear and direct CTAs or calls to action above the fold so that it doesn't get missed in the ad or in the placement so that people are able to really engage and click into the product. I think it's important to look at maybe shortening the load times on your landing page, shorten on where people are going into things. It's important to understand that reduces friction. If someone goes onto a mobile device, for example, and it takes 4 to 7 seconds to load the page, that if it could be done in 2 or 3 seconds sooner, can make a huge difference in terms of performance rate. So I think it's important to look at these things and to constantly also be looking at competitors' offers and things in the space to see what they're doing. I think highlighting testimonials or reviews early on is really important, can be really helpful, especially because in this new day and age, people are looking more and more for authenticity. So they're not always looking for that shiny, glossy, Nike sign. They're looking for something that says, oh, my mother would use this as well. So it's important, I think that. Most important, I think more than anything, is making sure that it's mobile optimized in the layout and a fast checkout. The mobile optimization is really important because, as you know, most people are on their phones and that's where they're doing shopping these days, especially if you're on an app like TikTok. I think it's also important to focus on things like urgency, staying within the lines of compliance. But if it makes sense, whether it's a timer, a limited stock, whatever it is, really taking shots at seeing how that converts with the customer, how the buyers go to that. And then I think it's also important to simplify forms and remove unnecessary fields. So if you have like an opt-in page where you're capturing emails, or if you have a quiz funnel, really look at where drop-offs are and where people are. Like quiz funnels are a huge thing these days in terms of paid media. Most of the top campaigns I know of on Meta, for example, are using a quiz funnel. However, there might be 9 to 10 steps in that quiz funnel, and 2 of them are people are dropping off. It's important to understand what people don't want to fill in and where they don't want to engage, because that's how you kind of keep everything going. So those are, in terms of CRO, the main things that I'm looking at in terms of performance. There are others, but that kind of encapsulates a lot.
Okay, so on the opt-in forms, you will remove after you track where they drop off, you will remove those fields and test again.
Yeah, like for example, let's say you have a field that someone's just filling in their information. So it's Raanan Rosenbaum, it's what my name is, what my email is, date of birth, X, Y, and Z, whatever they're asking for in there. You know, you can't ask date of birth on certain platforms for compliance reasons, but just for information's sake, I'm saying if you have a few fields that are maybe optional but always being left blank, I would be looking at if they're not completely, necessity to having that on the form, taking it out, because it just becomes excess noise. It becomes another distraction that people are looking at, where you want to simplify to deliver the product that they want at the end of the day. So if it's a form that people are filling out and there's a field or two that is not as relevant, that's always being left ignored, I would simplify and remove that and test again and see if there's a better conversion rate once you remove that, because chances are there's going to be.
And for the landing pages, do you test like elements, other elements in the page, like headlines, buttons,
For
colors, things
sure,
like
for
that?
sure. That goes into like making sure that you're clearing, making sure you have clear and direct like CTA buttons on there that are above the fold, making sure that you're adding in new visual elements and taking tweaks depending on, like, if you have like a text sales letter on your landing page, playing around with fonts, playing around with like accent colors, different things that you can do to see how it's converting with the customer.
That's good to know. And you mentioned that you are checking and helping your clients with VSLs. So you have patience watching all that long VSL. I honestly don't, but yeah. Uh,
I
so
sometimes
how
get
do
tired of watching television in the evening because I'm watching VSLs all day.
and how do you optimize? What I don't know. What tricks do you find that are working for good VSL?
VSLs, it really comes down to test, test, test. It's really important that you're testing different leads, different hooks, playing around with where, you draw different VSLs, for instance, will reveal the product at different points in the 40 to 50 minutes, let's say, of the VSL, or however long it is. It's important to see what change is made in terms of where you reveal the product, where people are staying on and, dropping off. And it's important to understand what hooks or what lead or what opening is really going to connect with people. So that's why, for example, when I refer copywriters or when we do copy for anyone, it's really important to make sure that it's someone who is going to not just do the job and walk away, but who's going to be willing to work with you to really make sure that you have enough leads, enough hooks, enough openings that you can find something that works. Because sometimes you can be working with the best talent in the space and they try something 30 times and it doesn't work. And on 31, it just pops off. And so it's important that goes into who you're working with on your team, even if it's an external partner, just that everything is set up for success.
And do you use AI, or do you think AI is useful for creating these VSLs and improving their like changing elements in them?
For sure. I mean, most of the top copywriters in the space that I know utilize AI for things. I think the important thing is to utilize AI versus letting AI run the show. So, for example, I've seen people rewrite a lot of things with AI, but they're also spending almost the same amount of effort they would in writing something, in adding in all the best prompts and making sure that the AI understands their tone of voice, their cadence, everything properly there. And I think it's important to not get lost by that. Like, for example, like I was saying with affiliates, most of the media buyers I know, they check with their friends who they trust on certain angles and things, especially if they're not competition. If I'm doing like fungus and you're working on e-commerce, we might share some angles and discuss to get ideas. And it's really important, I think, to really be looking at what's out there and understanding what works. You don't know things until you try. And so if you're doing with AI and you're really going into, full rewrites in there, it'd be great to then have a friend that you trust in the space who does their own copy to have a copy chief look at it. It's important that you really go through and fine tune after you get back from AI to make sure that it makes sense, to make sure it tells the story and that it's still on brand.
That's nice to hear. And I agree that affiliates share just partially what's working, and because it's performance based and it's understandable. You mentioned earlier TikTok shops because and you recommend TikTok shop to media buyers. Is there a budget they should start with or how it's working?
Well, TikTok shops, it's a little more complicated if you're just a media buyer going in there, just because most of the relationships on TikTok shops are specifically with the creators and with the brands directly. However, I know a number of affiliates in the space who have basically created their own kind of social media armies with creators in there where they'll manage them and actually handle brand deals and things. So again, it's like the evolution of media buying and affiliate is it depends how you do because then you're really kind of managing a whole group of creators and it's a different thing than managing links and where you're placing things. So it's a different business, but it's still the same, if that makes sense.
So they manage creators mostly.
They can because essentially most things are being done on there. Or if you were offering your services, for instance, you might be creating all of the videos with your creators that you're working with, but then also facilitating like TikTok shops live, like the live access on TikToks. That's a huge access point for TikTok shops. Most of the brands that are scaling are spending a lot of time on TikTok lives, which is where a lot of revenue comes in. So not every brand is set up for lives. They don't have the studio in-house. They may not have the right presenters or things like that. So you can really kind of make a play as an affiliate if you have those capabilities to get something like that set up on your end.
Yeah, that's something new for me to know about TikTok lives.
Yeah,
Wow.
the TikTok lives are really, they've become a really integral part of the biggest brands that are scaling on there.
What about Google Ads? People are still using Google Ads.
Yeah.
Um,
You know,
Take on that.
YouTube, of course, is still its own animal and is great. But with YouTube or with Google, you have Google Discovery Network. You have all these different Google search. I know a lot of people who are doing that, especially depending on the vertical and what you're doing. If you're doing an info product, Google works amazingly well. If you're doing something specifically in like the manifestation space, or personal development. That works really well on there. If you're trying to promote something that doesn't have a video element like a TSL or text sales letter, again, really great on there. So it really just depends. I mean, it really is about your capabilities and where you want to try. I would say to any media buyer who's trying to, let's say, focus on one or two platforms to really try to keep it down to one or two platforms rather than trying to do everything to understand. Because if, let's say, you start on Meta and Google and you have some really amazing success on Google, I would maybe turn off Meta until you get things scaled on Google. Because once you have a scaled product on one platform, it gives you a lot of leverage to do a lot more things. You have more cash flow coming in, you become more exciting to other offer owners and vendors, and then it gives you the ability to maybe then partner with another media buyer or create something for yourself.
Okay, thank you. That's amazing. What offers do you work now? You said you help brands, but do you run your own campaigns as well?
Not at the moment. I have different campaigns that I'm working closely strategically with media buyers and the brands themselves because I facilitate a lot of things and get things set up. Primarily, I'm working with a few different brands in the health and wellness niche. So supplements and like a fitness campaign that I'm working with, as well as a lot of e-commerce. I focus a lot of my business these days on e-commerce, mostly coming out of Eastern Europe in terms of the brands, but it's actually being run in North America primarily. So there's a little less of a visual element. So a big thing we focus on is really the branding, which we help a lot with in getting set up from a creative perspective also to then get connected with the right media buyers to kind of take it from there.
And how do you find winning creatives? Since you said about creatives, what's your process and how, I don't know, smaller affiliates replicate that on a limited budget, I would say?
I think the important thing, like I said, it's not reinventing the wheel, it's seeing what's working. So it's really important to look at all different things in the same category and to really understand. So, for instance, if you're trying to get into a certain niche, like let's say you're working on weight loss and blood pressure, I wouldn't go beyond that. You know, I would only start with one or two niches to really specialize in them. I know media buyers who can scale 3 to 4 niches and that's it. And that's more than enough. If you can do it well, there's a lot there. You don't have to do everything. So I think it's really important when you're focused specifically on a specific type of brand or product that you start looking at all of the competition in that space and not just looking, if you're focused on Meta, let's say, and you're doing a weight loss supplement, I wouldn't only be looking on Meta, even though that's going to be a gauge for creatives. I would also start looking on Snapchat, for example, and Google, because there may be things that you see in an angle they're using, an ingredient, an aspect to the product that then amplifies your Meta ads. So I think it's really important to see on the actual platform you're running what are the best performing there. For instance, if you're on Facebook, it sounds so simple, but Facebook ads library is like the greatest gift of anything. I'm in Facebook ads library all day, every day, looking at brands and getting inspiration and seeing what people are doing. Again, you don't want to copy what the top brands are doing, but you want to understand the mechanisms and what they're doing so that you can replicate that in your own voice.
You do that after you finish with VSLs, watching VSLs.
I do it all day long. Sometimes I get up around 6 a.m. I go to the gym for an hour, and then I'm just kind of stuck in the computer until 6 or 7 at night.
Wow, you are up early, I see.
This is how it works sometimes.
Okay, we are getting close to our end, but I still want to have your top advice for affiliate media buyers who want to start up, who just start in today's landscape, I would say. What should they focus on? What's your top advice?
Top advice is to connect with people doing what they want to be doing in the space. There's so many different Facebook groups. There's so many different communities. If you're going to a network like a ClickBank, for example, or a Digistore, go to those events when you go to affiliate shows and meet other people like you. Find out, share information, learn from people. For me personally, when I got into the space, as I said, there's no blueprint for things. Most of what I know, I was taught by someone, and not because they were paid to, because they were helpful and they were kind. And I think it's important to look for who your resources or your anchors are in the space to really learn from. I'd say that first and foremost. I think it's important to understand where you're going to be running ads and what you're looking at. So, for example, if you're going into VSL landscape and you're building relationships with like Buy Goods or ClickBank or Digistore, it's understanding who speaks the same language as you, who can help the most with things that you need, because that's going to be the training wheels that help things going. Similarly, let's say you were looking at just e-commerce, or e-commerce Nutra, and you're not in the VSL landscape, you might be looking at something like Square Dance or the Offer Club. So there's so many, or maybe CJ Affiliates. So there's so many different avenues. I think it's important to understand what you're trying to do and where you need to go. But try to connect with the most like-minded people, because that's the way you'll learn. And look at ads all day long. That's what I do.
Like-minded people, I like that. And also pay attention when people just exaggerate numbers, because that's also common in our space. People saying number like, I don't know, I had this ad spend. Okay, what's the revenue out of it?
100%.
Even the numbers look big. Look at the entire picture and don't trust. Pick your models and surround yourself with those great models that we have.
Exactly.
I agree with that. So this is optional, but I always like to ask this. If you could fix one big problem in performance marketing space, what would that be? If you see a problem that you would like to get solved.
Honestly, I feel like there's just the biggest problem is kind of lack of transparency and information. It's exactly like you said about people inflating numbers. I have clients and people that I speak with all the time who say, look at their funnel, look what they're doing. And sometimes you have insider knowledge to understand that that person is not doing anything. And so it's sometimes a bit of a facade in the space of what's really happening. Not with everyone. There are a lot of really honest, great people in the space. I think it would be great to have more of a rule book to understand how things work, because there isn't a roadmap with all of that. So I think that that's one of the biggest issues there. I think it's important to also understand the fundamentals of what you're doing. And I think sometimes people get excited by something, like if they are working with a brand and they don't have to do the extra steps of creating creatives, and the brand is doing it for them and they're mostly just running the traffic, you can get lazy and you can stop doing things. It's important, I think, that people are always in this space continuing to learn, continuing to understand what's going on. Before I understood tracking and I tried doing a few campaigns a few years ago, I lost a lot of money because I didn't know what I was doing. It's important to keep learning. Things change every day. AppLovin a year and a half ago, no one had ever heard of it. TikTok Shops has only been scaling for the last year or so. There's so many different avenues, let's say, that weren't the way they were 6 months ago or 3 months ago. I think the most important thing is for people to start like really trying to learn and investigate. That's something I'd love to change, is just like a further education, let's say, of how things work.
Wow, I love it. Yeah, sounds great. I agree with totally that if we'll help each other more, it will be much better because doesn't mean you steal the campaign. It means that you can adapt it for your own point of view, with your
Exactly.
own knowledge.
More of like a streamlined creative feedback loop, so to speak. I think
Yeah,
that would be, and I think better support for smaller media buyers actually helps the space more because it allows more smaller media buyers to become bigger media buyers.
they have to start somewhere.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you, Raanan. Where can people get in touch with you and if they want to work with your agency?
Yeah, for sure. So our agency is called M&R Strategy, MNR. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, Raanan Rosenbaum. I'm also on Facebook. Instagram is Raanan LR. Just connect with me. Happy to chat on Telegram. It's at Raanan LR. My name is Raanan LR. I'm pretty much available everywhere. So find me online and we can go from there.
Thanks a lot, Renan. Thanks a
Perfect.
lot for your time today. It was great having this talk. So insightful.
Thank you so much. It was really my pleasure. Happy to do.
Thank you. Bye.